The Conquest of Taiwan by Koxinga, a turning point in Taiwanese history. Good morning, everyone. Today, I'm going to tell you the dramatic and powerful story of Koxinga's conquest of Taiwan, also known as the Zheng Chenggong campaign. About Zheng Chenggong. Zheng Chenggong, better known in the West as Koxinga, was a famous Chinese military leader, patriot, and the founder of the Kingdom of Tungning in Taiwan. He was born in 1624 in Hirado, Japan. His father was Zheng Chenggong, a successful Chinese merchant and pirate, and his mother was Japanese. As a child, Zheng moved to China and studied at a Confucian academy. He was very smart and loyal to the Ming Dynasty, which was falling apart at the time. When the Qing Dynasty took over China, Zheng refused to surrender. Instead, he became a leader of the Ming loyalist forces and fought against the Qing. In 1645, the Southern Ming emperor gave him the title, Chenggong, meaning, success, and the honorary name, Guoxingye, meaning, Lord of the Imperial Surname, which Westerners later turned into, Koxinga. After many battles on the mainland, Zheng lost important cities and needed a new base. In 1661, he led over 25,000 soldiers across the Taiwan Strait and attacked the Dutch colony in southern Taiwan. After a 9-month siege, the Dutch surrendered in 1662, and Zheng took control of Taiwan. He planned to use Taiwan as a base to retake China from the Qing. Sadly, he died later that year, in June 1662, at the age of 37, just a few months after his great victory. Zheng Chenggong is remembered as a national hero in Chinese history. In Taiwan, he is also known as the man who ended Dutch rule and began the first Chinese government on the island. His legacy is both honored and debated, but no one can deny that he changed the course of Taiwan's history forever. This event happened from March 1661 to February 1662, and it completely changed the history of Taiwan, ending Dutch colonial rule and beginning the rule of the Ming loyalist government on the island. Over the next 10 to 15 minutes, I'll walk you through the background, the military battles, and the political, cultural, and social consequences of this campaign. We'll also explore the local indigenous resistance, the Dutch response, and how this moment still shapes Taiwan today. 1. Background. Why did Koxinga want Taiwan? Before invading Taiwan, Koxinga, whose real name was Zheng Chenggong, had already spent years fighting the Qing Dynasty in mainland China. He was loyal to the fallen Ming Dynasty and wanted to restore it. But by the late 1650s, things weren't going well for him. He had lost a key battle at Nanjing, lost top generals, and his base in Xiamen was running out of food and supplies. So, what could he do? A former Dutch translator named He Bin, who had escaped to Koxinga's camp, suggested a new idea: conquer Taiwan. He said the Dutch were weak, Taiwan had good farmland, and it could become a strong base for future attacks against the Qing. Koxinga agreed. He began planning one of the biggest military campaigns of his life. 2. Dutch defenses and the timing. At that time, Taiwan was ruled by the Dutch East India Company. Their main base was Fort Zeelandia in present-day Tainan. Another smaller fortress, Fort Provincia, stood nearby. However, the Dutch were not well prepared. In early 1661, their governor, Frederick Coyet, sent away many ships and soldiers. Only around 1,500 soldiers were left on the island, and they didn't expect a full invasion. 3. Crossing the sea. On April 22, 1661, Koxinga set out from Kinmen with 25,000 soldiers and hundreds of warships. After stopping briefly in Penghu, they sailed across the Taiwan Strait during rough weather. By April 30, they arrived at Lurman Channel, near Tainan, and began landing troops. This marked the beginning of the invasion of Taiwan. 4. First victory, the fall of Fort Provincia. Koxinga's forces first attacked Fort Provincia. Within just a few days, they surrounded the fort and began negotiations. By May 4, the Dutch commander Valentin agreed to surrender. About 270 people, including soldiers, women, children, and slaves, marched out and handed the fort over to Koxinga. This gave the Ming forces a major foothold in Taiwan. 5. The long siege of Fort Zeelandia. Next came the most difficult part, attacking Fort Zeelandia. The Dutch had gathered all their people and supplies inside the fort, which was well built and strongly defended. On May 25, Koxinga launched a full attack using 28 cannons. One shot even hit the Dutch governor's house. But the thick walls held firm. The Dutch counterattacked with crossfire from their fortress and caused heavy losses to Koxinga's troops. Koxinga had to pull back and switch strategies. Instead of attacking again, he decided to surround the fort and wait them out, a long-term siege. 6. Building a base in Taiwan. While the siege continued, Koxinga didn't waste time. He renamed the city area near the captured Fort Provincia to Dongdu Mingjing and later to Dongning. He created a government with 2 counties and began sending soldiers to farm the land. However, these farms were built on land traditionally owned by indigenous peoples, and this caused serious conflict. 7. Indigenous resistance. When Koxinga's troops started farming and building on indigenous territory, many indigenous groups fought back. In places like Zhuolu Mountain, Hue, Erlin, and especially in the powerful kingdom of Dadu, large numbers of Koxinga's troops were killed in ambushes and surprise attacks. In one case, over 1,000 out of 1,200 soldiers were killed. These events show that Koxinga's conquest wasn't just against the Dutch, it also involved deep conflict with local indigenous communities who were protecting their lands. 8. Dutch reinforcements and naval battle. In August 1661, a Dutch fleet led by Captain Kaw arrived with extra supplies, weapons, and about 50 soldiers. But their timing was bad. Typhoons and shallow water kept them from helping much. On September 16, a naval battle broke out near Fort Zeelandia. Koxinga's navy managed to sink or destroy several Dutch ships. Over 120 Dutch soldiers died in this sea battle, while Koxinga's forces lost about 150 men. This battle further weakened the Dutch position. 9. The final blow, January 1662. In January 1662, Koxinga began his final assault. On January 25, he attacked Fort Utrecht, a smaller Dutch fort near Zeelandia. After capturing it, morale inside Fort Zeelandia collapsed. On January 27, the Dutch called for peace talks. On February 1, Koxinga and Governor Koyet signed a formal treaty. The Dutch agreed to leave Taiwan, and Koxinga promised to treat the remaining Dutch people fairly, although he refused to return enslaved people. The war was over. The Dutch were gone. Taiwan was now ruled by a Chinese government, for the first time in history. 10. The birth of the Kingdom of Tungning. After the conquest, Koxinga declared Taiwan as the base for the Ming loyalist government. He created a new kingdom called the Kingdom of Tungning. He encouraged more Han Chinese immigrants to move to Taiwan. He brought his family, his court, and his soldiers. Sadly, just a few months later, on June 23, 1662, Koxinga died suddenly, possibly from illness or stress. His son, Zheng Chenggong, took over and continued to rule Taiwan. 11. Cultural impact, the rise of Han culture in Taiwan. One of the most lasting effects of Koxinga's rule was the spread of Han Chinese culture in Taiwan. Under Zheng Chenggong and his advisor Chen Yonghua, they built Confucian temples, used Ming Dynasty laws and rituals, and encouraged education, farming, and trade. This began the transformation of Taiwan from an Austronesian island to a Chinese cultural stronghold. Over time, Han culture replaced many indigenous traditions, and Taiwan began to move away from the Austronesian world and closer to mainland China's cultural system. 12. Historical significance. Koxinga's conquest of Taiwan is one of the most important turning points in the island's history. Why? It ended European colonial rule on Taiwan. It established the first Chinese government on the island. It began large-scale Han Chinese immigration. It shifted Taiwan's future toward East Asia instead of the Pacific Islands. It set the stage for the Qing conquest and later conflicts over Taiwan's identity. Some historians even say this event decided the next 400 years of Taiwan's history. Conclusion. Koxinga was more than a general. He was a symbol of resistance, a builder of nations, and a controversial figure who changed Taiwan forever. His campaign against the Dutch was a mix of bravery, strategy, hardship, and loss. But it also marked the beginning of a new era, one where Taiwan started to become the complex and fascinating place we know today. Thank you for listening.